Hey guys, welcome back. RC Crawler Talk. Today we got part 2 of the Class 1 comp truck build. Made some progress, made some good progress actually. Made some decisions, got the steering all figured out. Got some other stuff going on, and let's start with the steering. So, I did have a couple questions and replies to my last video. Thank you for that. One person said, why not use the spacers? I think he was talking about on the panhard. I could have used spacers. I could have spaced this out, but really all that would have done was taken the panhard further out, and it may have started running into issues with this guy hitting. So I opted to put that bend in it and drill another hole in the mount. The G-speed mount. I had to drill a hole in that G-speed mount. Let me throw you upside down here. If you look down here, so you have 2 holes there, 1 hole there. Those are the ones that came with that mount. If I were to put this panhard in that hole, I would have ran into clearance with that servo arm. Really hard to get you in there. Let's see how close it is right there. It actually is probably touching even now, even with that new hole that I drilled and tapped, even with the bends matching in both the panhard and the steering arm. But it works. I mean, that's pretty good steering. That's all the way driver's side. So I did use a spacer to space the panhard mount down, and that was also for clearance. That was for clearance of the servo arm itself, this guy. So if I would have still, when I had that hole there, that would have hit that rod way before I couldn't got that sharper steering. I did use a 4mm spacer underneath to space it down, and also a matching 4mm spacer to keep the steering arm parallel. Flip it over. And I also put the matching bend in this. So the matching bend in the steering arm to the panhard keeps them the same length. The spacers keep them parallel, meaning 0 bump steer through the suspension cycle. Now, yeah, most of the time you're not going to unload like this in a precarious spot to throw your steering off with bump steer, but you know, it can do some weird things. Also with the steering arm, I did have a mocked up with the ProTech clamping arm, and it's actually about 20mm, 20 to 21mm. So I picked up I had a Vanquish 24mm servo arm, so I got more throw. So I got all the way over both directions, and that was my solution. So once I got all that in there, and I put the tie rod from TNT KUSTOM WORX, came as part of that kit. When I turned it full way one way, this rod arm, or rod end, was hitting that cover. So all I did a little grinding on that differential cover. And I'm probably going to do a little bit more because it still stops it right there as well. That's okay. A little bit of grinding, she should be good. All right. Thank you for the comments. Now, what other progress did I make? So I did end up getting a locked up Eliminator. Locked Up RC sells a slipper Eliminator kit, and you get the shaft that goes through here, and you get the actual eliminator right there. I mean, even with that, everything is just super close, super tolerant, super tight tolerances. Okay, and you also see I've got I took a wild boar drive shaft, and this is a little challenging. you can see I got some glue on there because the center shaft, I just cut this guy down until I got the right length after I got everything bolted in. And that center shaft is so short that there's a lot of wobble between those. So I assembled the whole thing, put a bunch of glue on the inside on both sides of the center shaft, and then I just dab glue around the outside edge of it. And it's going to work out pretty good. Just make sure you have enough play at that end and at the transfer case side, because if you don't, it could put this stuff in a bind. You could start shoving on the front shaft, messing up the bearings, shoving this shaft back inside the transfer case, and it would just cause drag. So make sure you have enough slot between the two. You do have to modify the shaft from Locked Up RC. The videos up, I put in the link for the assembly of these guys. Scott Manis, he also did a video on how to set that up, so also check out his video as well. So I made progress there. I got my shocks in. We got some Dravtex. I got some fresh oil, and we'll go over those here shortly. I'm gonna install them on the truck, and then I'll talk about what oil and all that good stuff that I used. All right, shocks. So the shocks I'm going to be using are Dravtex shocks. These are made by Deluxe Fab. You can check out the site. These are the Dravtex shorts, and they list at eye-to-eye measurement of 92.5 millimeters. I opted to get a set of what they have offset shock caps. You can see the difference. And this is essentially about 8 millimeter difference in length. So inside all of my shocks, I limit the down travel. I put a little 1/4 inch spacer or a piece of rubber tubing underneath the piston of the shock shaft just to limit the down travel. And I do that for a couple reasons. One reason, when you're fully extended out with no spacer on the bottom, the actual piston of the shock sometimes can be out of oil and start aerating your oil as you're going through the cycle. So that could pose a little bit of an issue. The other reason is, especially for the Class 1, I don't want a whole lot of articulation. I want to make sure this truck is going to be stable on, climbs, on side hills. I don't want it to unload, and if it does unload, I don't want it to unload a lot. So I like to keep it limited on the down travel. So with that said, oil. So in all the shocks that I run, I usually run anywhere between 35 and 70 weight oil in my other rigs. These shocks, I decided to go, and I still have to change the regular cap out for an offset cap for the front. So this is the way we're looking at them. These are going to be for the rear. These are going to be for the front. And I did some test fitting. But before I get to that, let's go back to oil. Getting sidetracked. In the fronts, I'm using a 70 weight shock oil. And a super soft spring. So this has got a good firm feel to it. Dravtex are always really nice and smooth. It's got a good firm feel to it. The thicker oil will actually slow down the reaction time of your shock. Now, if you're running like a U4 or a go fast rig, you want this shock to work. You want it to be able to go up and down. So, the shock oil selection for those kind of rigs are a lot more important. On a crawler, you're going nice and slow, so you're not going to be you don't need that fast reaction time, right? So I opted to go 70 weight oil in the front, and in the back I did some kind of funky stuff. This one's a lot stiffer. I like the rear suspension to be a lot more stiff. So in the back I actually had about a 1/4 bottle of some 40 weight that I added some 3K differential oil. So this stuff is like super thick. Look at that. So we're going to see how this works. It may be too stiff for the back, but we'll see. Obviously, the spring choice right now, I have super softs on here that came with the shocks. Going to be adjusted and probably changing these out to you know, something a little firmer. But for now, mock-up stage, we're just going to set it up so it's full droop, so I know exactly where to place that body. All right, so for now, oh, on the front, so I decided to go the offset cap in the front as well, because when I put this guy on there, I still had, you know, 8 to 10 millimeters of up travel before I actually stopped on the axle with this setup. So it was still sitting higher than I wanted. Offset shock, I test fitted this, and it went right, exactly right height where I want it. So I got to get this changed out to an offset, and then I'll get them installed on the truck. All right, there you go, all installed. Dravtex on a VS410 chassis with HIGHROCK SCALE PERFORMANCE shock mounts. Now this guy, look how slow that guy is. Super slow. So this is going to make it stable and more predictable. It won't have nearly as fast of unloading because of the thicker weight. You know, and stuff's going to change when you start adding the rest of your goodies, you know, all your electronics, your servo winch. Got to get a servo winch for this, you know, and the body and all the finished products. So I think this is going to do pretty good. The back is still going to be whew, super stiff, but again, there's no weight on the back whatsoever. So again, this is just mock-up. Things will change when doing these types of projects. So one of the things that might change is locations of these shock tabs. As you can see, I kind of got the back, it's got a little bit of lean forward to it. It's up as high as it can go and as far forward as it can go. One way to change up the suspension geometry, you can play with it. Obviously, you see I have all these extra holes to mess with right through here. What I may end up doing, I may end up taking this tab, moving it one hole farther forward, drill another hole in the frame to allow me to adjust this top shock in more places to get the best performance out of it. Sometimes it's you may find that you want to lay the shock further down. The more of an angle you put on this, the less actual shock dampening you get. You just got to play with it, you know, figure out what works best for your truck, your driving, your terrain, yada yada yada. So, but for now, well, I need to decide on this because the body's going into Ed over at GU Off Road to do some body work for it. You know, he's going to do a drop bed for me, and he's going to bob the back. But I got just over a week to get where I want this body, so when we cut out the floor for the shock hoops, we know exactly where they're going to be. So I got to get that figured out quickly and how low I can get that body. And just kind of a little sneak peek, what body am I going to be using? The old clod buster body. Now, got more decisions to make. Let's put that in there just to kind of space it up a little bit. Let's see, here we go. So this is the 11-inch wheelbase that I was talking about before. It's 11-inch center of wheel well, center of wheel well. According to Sorka rules, I can extend the wheelbase plus or minus ½ inch combined total in comparison to the truck body. So it means that's why I went 11.5 inches to 11 inch. Now, roughly, if I place that in there, that's a pretty good approach angle. And when you're making a comp truck, for me, I want to have this thing, the tires cannot extend past the front of the body, including the bumper, not including the stinger, but including the bumper. So we also got to remember that the bumper has to be as wide as the widest part of the windshield. But with that said, I want to position this body to where when I add my 3/16 tube bumper in the front, that I'll have, ideally it would be class 1 is flat. So the tires don't extend past, however, it can be flat. So I'll find a big piece of angle iron or something to stick on here, and to make sure that this body position, the tire and the bumper, are going to be right at 90 degrees, or the tire's back a degree or so. So it's also got to be positioned in a realistic fashion. In the back also, with the body requirements, you're able to trim the lower behind the rear wheel well up to the bottom of the tailgate. Now I don't have a tailgate on this guy yet. Everybody's out of stock. So, but what I do know is, looking at pictures online, the tailgate actually ends about a 1/4 inch below this light bezel. So I just measured down 1/4 inch, and I'm probably going to have him hack it off there, maybe at an angle. But I also got to remember this is going to get bobbed. So I'm going to cut this and move this back here as far as I can get it. Also, the rear tires can't stick past the bumper or body. That's another problem for another day, another video. But this is going to work. This is turning out pretty nice. You can't do any major body mods in class 1 per Sorca rules, but you are allowed to, as well as the trim up behind the rear wheel up to the tailgate, in the front you're also allowed to trim up to the lowest point of the light bezel or grill. So I've already cut that piece out, this little piece right here, and that might be for the other side, but regardless, this was, that was in there like something like that. So I cut that much out of the front. You're not allowed to cut behind the front wheel well, except trim, molding, and flare. So I got about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch that I'm gonna need to nip here. Just the flare. Just take the flare out, and you should be still quote unquote comp legal for Sorca. We run Sorca rules up here in our comp, so I want to try to stick with that. And you know, in the event someday that I am able to go to scale nationals, I'll still be able to pass tech. So just kind of try to build by the rules. If you haven't, go to sorca.com, pull down the rules for all the 2020-21 is the latest. I believe they're doing some revisions on for 22, but pull down the rules and build to those specs, and go out and have some fun. All right, so that's it for this video, guys. It's already kind of long-winded. I'm going to get some more progress done on this and more mock-up, and I got to figure out sliders. Then we can, you know, I got to get the rear drive line in. There's all kinds of stuff. You know how these projects roll. So, all right, well, enough of looking at my messy bench and listening to me blab away. You guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you next video. Thanks for watching. Oh, one last thing I forgot to mention. So on the shocks, I did mention that I put a 1/4 inch spacer underneath the piston, and the difference in height between the offset shock caps and the regular shock caps was about 8 millimeters. So this current setup with a short drive tech, a 1/4 inch spacer on the inside, and the offset shock caps, now my eye to eye measurement is 80 millimeters. 80. So essentially, I mean, you could just buy 80 millimeter shocks, but they don't. Well, actually, DriveTech now makes the shorter guys, so that might be an option for you guys. So that's what I did. I just want to make sure I got that in there. All right, take care.